Welcome to Motherhood. Whether you're 18 or 80, Dr. Christina Hibbert, clinical psychologist, author, and mother of 6, is here to help you through the ups and downs, the joys and frustrations, the new information from experts, and the stories of happiness and heartbreak from real moms. Remember, if you can, tell your mama to listen too.
And I'll make everything all right.
Here's Christy.
Welcome to Motherhood. I'm Dr. Christina Hibbert, here to help you overcome, to become, and to flourish in this stressful experience we call motherhood. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm a mom, you guys are moms, and it is stressful, isn't it? I mean, that's probably the one word we can all agree that it is tough. It's tough to be a parent. It's tough to be a mom. It's tough to keep up with the schedules and the lack of sleep and everybody's emotional needs and try to hopefully fit in some time for our own and to remain calm through the whole process. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. So I know this is a topic that everybody is going to be eager to hear about. We're going to be talking about the road to calm. And that's the title of a fabulous new book called The Road to Calm Workbook. And we have both authors with us here today. We're going to introduce them in just a minute as our special guests to talk about some ways that we can overcome the powerful emotions, what's called emotional flooding. We're going to talk about what that means and how we can put more calm into our life. I think for me as a mom, that's always been probably one of my number one challenges and goals is to keep calm when I've got, I have 6 kids and when they're all going crazy or when I'm losing it. How do I bring myself back and not go over the edge of, emotional flooding, as we'll be talking about. So, and in fact, we've talked about this before, but if you go search online, my kids are driving me crazy, you will see my post probably number 1 on the page because I've written a couple of them. My kids are driving me crazy because that's how I feel. And I don't really know what else to call it other than I feel like I'm being driven crazy. So if you go and look that article up, you will see that I understand what it's like to feel like you're driven crazy, you're emotionally overwhelmed. I guess that's a good way to put it. And to, struggle with sometimes how do we calm down in those situations where we're really having a hard time. And that's what today's show is all about. So before we get into today's show, before we introduce our guests, as I always do, I just want to thank you for being here and hope that you have joined our Facebook group, Growing Through Motherhood. If not, just go search for it, ask to be added. We'd love to have you there. And visit my website, drchristinahibbert.com, for all kinds of resources on the things we talk about today, including links to my YouTube channel and videos. And remember that we do have the fabulous motherhoodtv.net website now, and it's linked up with the YouTube channel so that you can watch videos of all the episodes, including today's. So if you want to see what's going on instead of just listening, you've got that option as well. Now, as I mentioned, we're going to talk about this idea of emotional flooding or emotional overwhelm, and we're going to explain what that means in just a minute. But I opened up the Road to Calm workbook. I was looking through it and working on some of the ideas, and I found a couple questions that I wanted to start off by asking all of you listeners out there to get you focused in on how you're doing and what you can take away from today's show. So there are 2 questions when it comes to emotional flooding that can kind of get you an idea to see if this is something you might struggle with. And this is from page 4 of the workbook. So first of all, everybody, ask yourself this. Does the intensity of my emotion ever interfere with my functioning or my relationships? So does the intensity of your emotion ever interfere with either your functioning or your relationships? And I can't answer for everybody, but I think I'd have to say yes, that has happened to me before, yes. Because, as moms, it is a stressful situation we're in pretty much every day. Okay, so then, second question, follow-up here. Ask yourself this one. Might an objective observer, so someone standing around watching, think that the degree of emotion I sometimes experience is excessive relative to the situation at hand? So, would somebody watching ever think that you're acting a little too overkill, a little over the top, a little too emotional for whatever's happening? Are you having a meltdown because your child spilled the milk, right? We probably all have been there. So I ask you these questions and I hope that you take the time to really sit and think about them, because I want you to see that everything we're going to talk about today can be really helpful for everybody out there. And I hope you'll go and check out the Road to Calm workbook. So before we start talking, let's introduce our guests. So welcome. We've got Carolyn and Lissa. Welcome to Motherhood, both of you.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
It's great to have you both. So before we start talking about the fabulous book and also this topic that I think is so valuable for moms especially, let me introduce you both so everybody gets to know you a little bit, okay? So first we have psychologist Carolyn Deitch, and she is the director of the Center for the Treatment of Anxiety Disorders in Farmington Hills, Michigan. She's also an elected fellow with both the American and the Michigan Society of Clinical Hypnosis. That's something I'm actually taking a course in hypnosis in just a few weeks. It's really a fabulous tool. I'm very excited to talk to you about that. That's a wonderful tool. So she splits her time between clinical practice, supervision, teaching, consultation. She's also a speaker, and she frequently presents on anxiety, affect regulation, and relationships. She is also the author of 4 books, including the award-winning Affect Regulation Toolbox, Anxiety Disorders, The Go-To Guide, and, of course, this fabulous new book, which is the Road to Calm workbook, as well as another book that you guys wrote together. You guys have done 2 together then, huh?
Yeah.
Pretty cool. Okay. Okay. So the other one's called Anxious in Love, How to Manage Your Anxiety, Reduce Conflict, and Reconnect with Your Partner. So that's awesome. You guys can check out all of those through her website, which is anxiety-treatment.com, as well as find some audio recordings that you can download to help you manage anxiety, insomnia, overeating, and other types of related issues. Okay. So that's Dr. Carolyn Deitch. Thank you so much for being here. And then we have Lissa Lorberbaum. So Lissa has a master's degree in clinical psychology. She specializes in somatic psychology and treats affect dysregulation across a wide range of clientele. She lives in California, in Los Angeles. She practices in the Pasadena area. I used to live in Alhambra when I went to school, right in your area there. You can find her online at therapy-healing-recovery.com. Or you can find her on Facebook as well and connect with both of these fabulous women. So let's talk about your book, The Road to Calm workbook. And since I've been using this term already a bunch, let's define this. Let's talk about what is emotional flooding.
I'll take this one. All right.
Great.
Okay. Emotional flooding is an experience that happens to all of us when we get overwhelmed. And some of us get overwhelmed more easily than others. We get overwhelmed when we're triggered. And there are inevitable triggers in our lives. We get triggered when we have too much to do. We get triggered when we're angry at people. We feel triggered when we're worried. Some of us are more vulnerable to being triggered than others. It's kind of a characteristic that is a trait that is fairly consistent over time. And when you take somebody who's vulnerable to being triggered, coupled with the inevitable stress or aggravations of life, then we're prone to flooding. What happens? What do I mean by flooding? Well, what flooding is that you get overwhelmed by chemicals, essentially. Mind and body are one, as you know. Mm-hmm. And we get overwhelmed by the chemicals of epinephrine and cortisol. And then what happens is that there's this insidious cycle where we start thinking thoughts that are not in our best interest, like, I can't take it, or these kids are driving me crazy.
Yes.
Or if you're a self-deprecator like I am, I'm a terrible mother. I'm doing everything wrong.
Yeah.
Or this is going to be a disaster. And on the affective and emotional end of emotional flooding, there is the feeling of being on edge, tense, heavy, shaky. So there's this circle that happens with emotional flooding, with the biological, physiological, the cognitive, and the emotional. And then that sometimes leads to the behavioral. And the behavioral, for some people, is just to avoid and escape and get out of there.
Right.
Or to yell.
Right. Fight or flight kind of thing, right?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So I think what you're saying is probably something that most of our listeners can relate to. Now, you did mention, and maybe Lissa, you could speak more to this. You did mention, Carolyn, that some of us are more vulnerable to this kind of emotional flooding. I mean, what would make one more vulnerable to it? I mean, and how do we know? Do we know just because we feel like our kids are driving us crazy all the time, or because of how we act, or because of how we feel? I mean, how would our listeners be able to tell if they're prone to emotional flooding, Lissa?
Well, I think you mentioned the importance of context, and that's really key. If your child falls and has a gash on her head and needs stitches, and you immediately go into fight-flight mode to get your child to the doctor to get her taken care of, that is a very adaptive response to the situation. If the same response occurs, let's say when your child spills her juice, that same surge of emotion, that same of alarm, that same rush of energy, that in that context would constitute emotional flooding, because it doesn't adaptively fit the situation. Right.
Gotcha. So we can tell by how, is this relevant? It kind of goes back to that first question from your book, right? That, would somebody else think that this might be a little extreme for the situation? And that would signify emotional flooding, right, Carolyn? Yeah.
Yeah. The person who's the emotional flooder, and again, we can all with enough stress be emotionally flooded.
Right.
But for people who are chronically emotionally flooded, they're the classic mountain on a molehills kind of person.
Yeah.
So their partners or other people, friends might say to them, gee, you're making an awfully big deal about this, or you're being so hard about this, or you're overestimating disasters when it really is unlikely to be a disaster.
Yeah.
So you can sometimes get that from feedback. And why are some people like that? Well, it's partly modeling. It can be trauma. Like if your parents are people who are overreactive, or one parent in particular, there seems to be a heritable component. Like I had mentioned, about 20% of us are born with a tendency to be anxious rather. Probably you, Christy, with your 6 kids. There's enough of a sample that they're born with different temperaments.
Yeah.
Some more chilled and some more anxious than others.
Right.
So again, what happens then, not only do you suffer more, but also it seems as if the anxiety reaction or the emotional reaction is sustained longer. So most of us get frightened, for example, if we're almost in a car accident, but it goes away in 15 minutes, a half an hour. Yeah. But somebody who's likely to be emotionally flooded might be upset for the whole day or even minute.
Right.
So it's not only is it the incongruity between the stimuli, as we say in psychobabble, and the trigger, it's also how long it's sustained that's a factor as well.
Right.
And it robs you from the pleasure of the moment.
Right. And that's exactly what I was thinking is, this obviously when you're describing it that way, when we can't calm down, when we can't, sort of get through those emotions more quickly, then it definitely is going to impact our parenting and our relationships. And, we're on a motherhood show, so especially with parenting, this is so relevant. So maybe, Lissa, could you tell us a little bit about the impact of emotional flooding on parenting?
Well, I mean, in terms of what Carolyn was just saying about the sustainment of the heightened emotion, I mean, if you think about an infant or a toddler, their emotions, 1 minute they'll be laughing, about 2.5 seconds later they'll be crying hysterically, then you cheer them up, and about another 6.2 seconds later they're laughing wonderfully again. And if we don't have that continuity of the fluidity of emotion to go with it, and we stay stuck in those various emotional stages, we really don't get to experience as much of the joy of our children. Right. And we don't really get to give our children the experience of what it feels like to have the parent kind of be present with them along all those different fluctuations of emotion.
Right.
So, that's one way on a very, day-to-day basis that it does come into play.
Yeah, that's so important. And we've talked a lot on this show about how, with motherhood especially, joy is in those moments. So when you can't pay attention to those moments, you're going to miss the good stuff because you're still so upset about the hard stuff, right? Yeah.
Yes. I wonder if I can add something to that.
Yes, please.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean,
one of the areas that I specialize in is anxiety. And I'm seeing a lot more anxious kids, and I'm seeing more anxious parents lately. And what's happening is if the parents cannot contain their emotionality, then what they do in the name of love, I actually wrote an article called Stop in the Name of Love. Because of their own anxiety, what they try to do is fix things for their children. That they become so worried that things aren't perfect for their children, that they try to arrange things so that they will be. And the inability to tolerate your child's distress because of your own emotional flooding is actually injurious to your children. And it's injurious in a couple of different important ways. One of the big things that I see is it robs the child of self-agency. In other words, when a child is robbed of the ability to figure out solutions for him or herself, then they become more vulnerable in this world. And that's why we're seeing college students texting home 5 times a day.
Yeah.
Or having their parents call their professors. And so they're actually, in the name of love, and most parents want to give and love to their children, obviously, but in the name of that, they're actually creating less sturdy young people. And then we get to something that is in the neuropsych literature now, is that we know that our babies and our children and even each other mirror each other's neurotransmitters.
Yeah.
And so that if we're around somebody who's anxious, then that creates this really insidious cycle. And it's not all the parents' fault. The children, an anxious kid pulls the mother in. It isn't like the mother. You might be different with your different children with different temperaments.
Right.
The kids pull them in and say, "I can't do this. I need you." Texting. I come to school right now. I have a stomach ache. That kind of thing.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
But this combination, and then on the other end, aside from anxiety, in terms of frustration, if you don't, we're getting into the next part of the book, the stop solution. If you don't pause when your children inevitably frustrate you, they can be vulnerable to your not necessarily most evolved reactions.
Yes. Well, I appreciate that because, it obviously paints a picture that we've, as parents, have all witnessed in some form or another when we aren't able to stop that emotional flooding from coming and aren't able to pause and sort of catch our breath and focus on the moment and see what's really happening and respond accordingly. That it does impact our relationships and the child and ourselves and how we feel about ourselves as parents as well. But that there is a solution here, that this isn't something that, like you say, some of us might be born with a temperament that's more likely to get more emotional and to have a harder time calming down. But that doesn't mean that we can't all improve in bringing more of that calm into our lives. And that's where your stop solution comes in. So let's see, who wants to start by talking about the stop solution? I guess we'll go through each one of the STOP. So Lissa, do you want to start?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So when it comes to parenting, the good news and the bad news is that we teach what we know. So if we have a chronically, overreactive or, system that floods a lot, that is one of the things that we teach our kids. The good news is that we can also learn something different. So that is where the stop solution comes in. Mm-hmm. And with the stop solution, it's a very simple 4-part approach, STOP, for learning how to halt an emotional overreaction, halt that emotional flooding, and then not only halt it, but lessen it. So we can begin to learn to, no matter what the day throws us, no matter what circumstances happen, we always have the option to be able to get calm, to get back to that place of ease. So Carolyn, do you want to go into what some of the what the S and the the T stand for?
Yeah, it's an acronym, and stands for SCAN. The hardest part of controlling emotions is catching them early.
Yes.
Before we say something that we regret. And so what we train our clients to do and our readers to do is to catch the precursors of the emotional floodings.
Mm-hmm.
And so we teach them to scan. So if you typically feel you're hurt quickly, that might be a physiological red flag for you to stop. Or if you're like me and you're more cognitive, I might catch myself saying, I can't believe this is happening.
Right. Yeah.
Or I've got too much to do. And I'll catch the cognitive more than the physical.
Mm-hmm.
They're all a bundle. And then there's the scanning, just the feelings as well as the emotionality and the physiology. So when you get to just catching that you're about to blow up, or you're about to say something that is not carefully crafted out, you need to take a timeout. And I'll go with the T2 right now, if that's okay, Liz.
Sure.
Timeout not for children only.
Yes.
We have children, but we need timeouts. And what is a timeout? A timeout is a pause.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't even have to be a very long pause. But we advise our clients to find a place, a bathroom, the bedroom, somewhere in your case, where the kids won't come in. Maybe it's the bathroom. They probably leave you
my
alone
closet with the door shut. Hiding behind my clothes. Yeah, no.
And you take a break and you pause. And then in that pause, you move into a calm response. Lissa, you want to go into the O?
Yeah, before we go into the O, one thing that I love so much about this is it's so easy for children to believe that their parents are invincible. And and that the T in the timeout uses the exact same language that children get when they need to take a pause. I think it's a wonderful opportunity for teachable moments, and to even get to show your kids, oh, you know what, this is what mommy does when she feels really, really mad, or really, really sad, or really, really frustrated. And it can be fun to even let the child come in and take the time out, obviously not when you really need it, but to take the time out with you. And so it can be something that the whole family does, and it can reinforce the child's learning to self-regulate themselves. So, what initially, arose from an adult's struggle to contain emotion can actually become a really wonderful bonding piece and teaching moment for parent and child.
So, and before you get into the O, I want to emphasize this, because this is also, when we learn this, then we model it for our kids, right? So we teach them to scan their emotions and scan their thoughts, and to take a time out. And I'm so with you. I think that I prescribe timeouts for couples, and for anybody that's having an argument issue, or you can't calm down. You really do need that timing, and it does take a while for your body to calm down. I mean, it takes a good 30 to 60 minutes for your body to actually calm down when you're really, really emotionally worked up. And to remove the stressor, which you don't want to think. I know a lot of you moms out there are probably thinking, I don't want to think of my child as my stressor, but in that moment, your child is your stressor. So, if you can find a break, that's what's going to help you calm down. And then, like Lissa just said, you're modeling for the child as well in language that they can understand, right?
Now, in terms of, I'm just going to add on to what you said. Yeah. It's absolutely true, Chrissy, that you need to downregulate the body. In other words, you need to calm the physiological nervous system so you can work optimally. But most of us don't have 30 to 60 minutes.
That's right.
In our busy lives.
Especially when you're a mom. We're talking to moms here. We can't go hide for an hour in our closet, much as we might like to.
We'd like to. So,
right.
But you can do a lot in 90 seconds.
Yeah, great.
You need to take 90 seconds. And in 90 seconds, that part of the brain, the amygdala that mediates fear and anger, can calm down. Mm-hmm. And then in that 90 seconds, you can use some of our techniques that Lissa is going to talk about that calms us to a place where we can then say to ourselves, should I react? And if so, how or when?
I love that. So let me emphasize that before we let Lissa speak again. Sorry, Lissa, we keep jumping in. But I want to emphasize that for everybody listening. Should I react? And if so, how? You know, to stop and question that and take that time. And that's simple. Like you say, that can you can take a few minutes. You can take a few deep breaths. 1 minute, like you say, a minute and a half, whatever it might be. And then ask yourself. 90 seconds.
Yeah.
Okay.
90 seconds. And you can do it in the car.
Yes.
You can do the breathing in the car.
Yes. That's great. That's great. Okay, good. And that's checking in with ourselves too and understanding where we are and and then asking yourself where do I want to go with this, right? Giving yourself an option. Okay, so let's talk about the O then. Lissa, what does O stand for?
So that brings us perfectly to O, because O is all about overcoming the initial flooding. So that question, should I react, and if so, how, is going to be answered very differently if your emotional barometer is up here versus 90 seconds later when you've been able to take it down to here. Because if you ask yourself and answer that question here, the answer is often very midbrain based. So the answer is going to be yes, because I feel this way, and so this needs to urgently happen. And if you get to pause and use some tools to kind of come down here, it will be a very, very different thought process when you evaluate, should I react, and if so, or should I respond, and if so, how? And in terms of what Carolyn was speaking of, there are 4 tools for that O phase.
Okay, good.
It begins with the eye roll, and Carolyn is a master at teaching and demonstrating the hypnotherapeutic interventions that we use in this toolbox. So I will throw that back over to Carolyn to get to show you for the viewers and tell you for the audio listeners what the eye roll sounds like and looks like.
Okay.
Great. Okay.
The eye roll. Thank you. Thank you, Lissa. The eye roll is my favorite speedy technique to move into a different state of being. And most people can do it quite easily. I can do it with you right now if you're willing to do it, Christy.
Oh, yes, I would love to.
Okay. Just roll your eyes up toward your forehead.
Okay. Doing it.
Oh, perfect. Take a deep breath in. Hold the breath. Hold the eyeballs up. And then slowly exhale, and as you do, close your eyes. Perfect. And then just move inside. Move inside. And what I'd like you to do right now is just see if there's any tension in your body. If there's any tension in your body. And if there is, make a fist with one hand and just pretend that you're putting all the tension in your body, even if you have to pretend right now, put it all the way into that fist. That's right. You might even give it a color. A lot of people pick red or orange or black. If that's available to you, just put a color in there. And then slowly open your fingers and release that tension. Keep your eyes closed if that's okay with you. And just imagine that all that tension is going down, 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 down to your floor. I see that carpeting, I believe, under the carpeting, under the floorboards, into the core of the earth, far, far away. That's right. And just take a moment, if you would, to focus on your breathing. You don't need to change your breathing, simply notice it. And as you do, you can be curious as to what you notice. You might notice the temperature of the breath. Cooler when you breathe in and warmer than you go when you breathe out. And I'm just going to have you continue to breathe for just a moment and have the experience of how nice it is, how easy it is to just shift your body and mind into a place where you're more relaxed And since you're more relaxed, you're more in control of your words that you think, the words that you say, and the way that you feel. Good. You're okay?
Open my eyes now. Yeah. I was on a little break, everybody. I was just, I know I'm supposed to be the host of the show, but that was a very nice little break for me. Thank you, Carolyn.
I hope that was okay, just to go on a roll and demonstrate with you what we do with our clients.
Oh, please. Yes, it was wonderful. That's why I opened my eyes a few times, because I'm like, I don't want to get so relaxed I forget that I am supposed to be doing something.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, that's wonderful.
And
I love the visual. Yeah, go ahead.
Once you're relaxed, that's when you can go into P. Can you explain what P is?
Yeah.
Lisa?
So P is putting the tools into practice. And so as Carolyn so wonderfully demonstrated, we get our system, our emotional barometer to go from here to here. And then we get to intervene with the tools and putting the tools to practice and actually bring it down more. Really quickly before I jump into the P section of stop, for the O, readers of the workbook get what we've called the daily stress inoculation. And it is a daily break, obviously not during breakfast time, not while the kids are coming home and you need to be supervising homework or while dinner is being made, but sometime during the day where you get to take 10, 15, 20 minutes and practice the tools that we use in O. And the more that you practice those on a daily basis, the more powerful they are in the moment when you need those 90 seconds. So, it's kind of like, any acquired skill. If you start weightlifting, it's going to be hard and cumbersome at first. And then you get used to doing the reps, and all of a sudden what used to be a challenge is easy.
Yeah.
So that daily practice allows people to be able to have more of a fluidity in putting into place that O intervention that brings your emotions from here to here. So the actual tools, once we are emotionally here, we have about 12 different tools in the toolbox that you get to apply in various different combinations, depending on what it was that was actually the trigger, the stressor. If you're stressed by an interpersonal interaction, if you have, a little bit of a spat with your partner, or if tensions are a little bit wrought at work with a boss or a coworker, that's going to be a different set of tools than you would need for let's say that somebody just cut you off on the road in front of you, and you get so flooded with that rush of adrenaline. Very, very different tools. And so
it really is specific. I'm sorry. It really is specific to, and 12 is a nice number. I mean, there's several options there. It's not just one size fits all here. As we've been talking about, there's different situations, different people, and we can, everybody that, is using the book or goes and tries to use the stop method will have options here. And I also want to mention that you also have a Psy.D included in the book too. So does that go along with these tools or? Yeah.
Absolutely. And an app.
Oh, and an app. How fun.
Right.
So what's your app called? Is it the Road to Calm app?
Road to Calm companion app, right? Right.
Oh, how fun.
Yeah. I'm really glad, Lisa, you brought up about the daily stress inoculation, because we really encourage our readers and our clients to spend about, 10, 15 minutes every morning, if possible, to kind of establish a baseline for the day. Yeah. And then later on, you're less likely to be triggered, or you'll be more resilient to the inevitable aggravations that we all have in life.
I love that. And I love that term, daily stress inoculation. I'm thinking we all want that, right? That's perfect.
Right.
So that's great. And so, go ahead.
I just wanted to mention a couple tools, if that's okay.
Yes, please. Yeah, that's what I was going to ask.
Do you have time for that?
Yeah, please.
Okay. All right. I mean, one of the two. I have so many favorites. I'm sure it's just like you having 6 children. It's hard to pick your favorite.
Well, it depends on the day. Yeah.
It depends on the day. For me as well with the tools. But one of the things that is true for so many of us who are hard on ourselves, we forget our resources, our internal and external resources.
Yeah.
So one of the tools that we use is accessing memories of times where we got through it. To remember there was that time where 3 of the kids were sick and my husband was out of town and I got through it. Or to remember that. And then another kind of opposite to that, but working for the same benefit, is going into the future. It's called fast forwarding. And you go into the future when these kids are grown up.
I do this one. When I'm going crazy, I imagine that they're all gone and I'm lonely and I'm missing them so that I can take it in and appreciate the craziness right now, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of like that.
And 2 more, there are 12, but we don't have time to talk about all of them.
Okay.
But related to what you just said is one of my very, very favorites is the juxtaposition of 2 thoughts and feelings. And that's a fancy way of saying you can have 2 different thoughts and feelings at the same time. So for your listeners, if your child is driving you crazy, you can put all your frustration about that child in one hand and then remember what is endearing about that boy or girl in the other. Maybe just thinking about him or her as a toddler. And then bringing both hands together to your heart and holding both at the same time. The goal is not to get rid of the frustration or the anger, often justified.
Right.
Especially with teenagers, but to hold both.
Right.
Hold both.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. And calming too. I really appreciate that. That's great. Lissa, do you want to share a couple of your favorites out of the 12 in our last couple minutes here?
Yeah, sure. Well, juxtaposition, the one that Carolyn just mentioned, is one of my favorites. Another one that, earlier on Carolyn was mentioning when she was talking about scanning that a lot of her keys that she's gearing up for an overreaction are cognitive or thought-based. My biggest ones are more physical. So I'll notice, that my cheeks are beginning to feel hot, or I'll notice that my heart rate's beginning to increase and I can feel it thumping a little bit more in my chest. Yeah. So for people who like me, tend to notice the physiological overreaction first, dialing down anxiety is one that I love. And in it, you get to visualize a dial. And so you get to kind of give yourself a visual for me, it's usually dialing down anxiety, but in general, it's dialing down reactivity. So whatever the overreaction is, we get to imagine this dial and then slowly get to visualize just turning it down. And as I see the dial turn in my mind's eye, I can slowly feel the reactivity start to drain.
I love that.
So that is, in addition to the juxtaposition favorites. Yeah.
That's great. These are all so great. And if we had time, we could share more, but that just means everybody's just going to have to get your book, The Road to Calm Workbook, right? Because it is a workbook and it's geared toward actually teaching you all these skills and helping you apply them, right? It's not just a book where you're going to read about it, but you're actually going to do all these activities to help you improve, right?
And it's been so satisfying. People are saying it is changing their lives.
Oh, that's so
very
great.
satisfying.
Well, I love the title too. And if you just look at the cover, everybody, it's very relaxing looking, even just looking at the book. You can visualize yourself at the beach. I like that. And everybody wants to be a little bit more calm and beyond calm. So I'm so grateful for both of you being here and sharing your talent, your wisdom, and all these skills with our listeners. And I hope that everybody will go out and check out the book. So where they can pretty much find it all over the place, right? This is...
Yeah.
Yep.
Amazon, W.W. Norton.
Yep.
You can order it really anywhere.
Barnes & Noble bookstores.
That's right. These are fellow Norton authors, and pretty much you can find the book anywhere. So go check it out. The Road to Calm Workbook, Life-Changing Tools to Stop Runaway Emotions by Carolyn Deitch and Lissa Lorberbaum. Thank you both so much for being here, and I wish you the best in all your fabulous work that you're doing.
Thank you so much. It was delightful to be with you.
And for everybody listening, thank you for tuning in. I hope that you have learned a few things today about how to stop your emotional flooding moments and realize that we all have them as moms sometimes, and it's okay, but that we can improve. And these are some great tools to help you do just that. So check out the Road to Calm workbook. And for more on some other things that you can do, you can visit my website, drchristinahibbert.com. Until next time, I hope everybody will continue to grow through motherhood instead of just going through it, because we know it's a lot better to grow through it and to do it together as we do each week here on Motherhood Radio. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye, everybody.